Deep in the void between the Orion and Perseus arms of the Milky Way, the research vessel Hawking drifted silently through the starlit expanse. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic displays that surrounded her. 20 years of deep space exploration had taught her to trust her instincts, and right now, every fiber of her being told her they were about to make history. Dr. Chen called out Marcus Rodriguez, her senior sensor specialist. "You're going to want to see this. The gravitational readings, they're unlike anything we've ever encountered." Sarah moved swiftly to his station, her movements practiced and precise despite the low gravity. The sensor display showed a massive anomaly ahead, a perfect sphere of distorted space, nearly 50,000 kilometers in diameter. "It's some kind of containment field," she muttered, more to herself than to Marcus. "Advanced beyond anything we've seen, even from the Galactic Assembly." The Hawking had been mapping this sector for 3 months, following a trail of unusual energy signatures that had puzzled Earth's best scientists. The Galactic Assembly, the coalition of advanced alien civilizations that dominated known space, had dismissed their mission as a waste of resources. Humans, they claimed, were too young a species to be conducting meaningful deep space research. "All hands to stations," Sarah announced over the ship's comm. "We're going to penetrate the field." The Hawking's engines hummed to life, pushing the ship forward with deliberate care. As they approached the boundary of the anomaly, the sensors began registering increasing levels of quantum fluctuation. Field penetration in 3, 2, 1. A brilliant flash of light filled the observation deck, and for a moment, Sarah felt her stomach lurch as if the ship had passed through a waterfall. When her vision cleared, she found herself staring at something impossible. Ships, hundreds of them, perhaps thousands. They hung motionless in the void, their massive forms stretching as far as the eye could see. Each vessel was easily 10 times the size of the largest Galactic Assembly dreadnought, their hulls covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. "My God," Marcus whispered. "It's a fleet, a whole damn fleet." Sarah's mind raced with the implications. These ships were clearly artificial, yet they displayed technology far beyond anything known to current galactic civilization, and they had been here, hidden in this pocket of distorted space, for who knew how long. "Begin full spectrum analysis," she ordered. "I want every sensor we have scanning these ships, and get me a secure channel to Earth Command. Priority 1. The response from Earth Command was swift, but the reaction from the Galactic Assembly was swifter. Within days, the discovery had become the subject of heated debate in the Assembly's grand chambers on Alpha Centauri. These humans, sneered High Commissioner Zax Toll, his crystalline form shimmering with dismissive colors, barely a century into space travel, and they claimed to have found a fleet of ancient ships superior to our own. Preposterous. Sarah stood before the Assembly, her formal uniform feeling stiff and uncomfortable under the alien gazes of dozens of species. "The evidence is clear, High Commissioner. These ships exist, and their technology is unlike anything in known space. We believe they could be the key to understanding." "Understanding what, Dr. Chen?" interrupted Zax Toll. "How to tell tales, how to waste the Assembly's time with fantasy." But Sarah had come prepared. With a gesture, she activated a holographic display showing detailed scans of one of the derelict vessels. "These ships exhibit quantum-locked materials we can't even theoretically replicate. Their power cores, though dormant, show signs of being able to manipulate space-time itself. This isn't fantasy, High Commissioner. This is the greatest archaeological find in human history." The Assembly chambers erupted in dismissive chatter, but one voice cut through the noise. Ambassador Lyra, representing the enigmatic Arcanian species, raised her voice. "Let them study the ships." The chamber fell silent. The Arcanians were among the oldest species in the Assembly, and their words carried weight. "If the humans are wrong," Lyra continued, her luminescent eyes fixed on Sarah, They will learn the limits of their understanding. If they are right. She left the implications hanging in the air. The assembly voted to allow humanity to study the fleet, though few expected anything to come of it. They would soon regret their dismissiveness. Back at the fleet, a young engineer named James Harper made the first breakthrough. While studying one of the smaller vessels, he noticed that the shifting patterns on the hull responded to human bioelectric fields. "It's like they were waiting for us," he explained to Sarah, his eyes bright with excitement. "The patterns, they're not just decoration. They're an interface, and they're compatible with human neurological patterns." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "Are you saying these ships were designed to be used by humans?" "No," James replied, "but whoever built them must have been similar to us in some way. Similar enough that we can interface with their technology." As if to underscore his point, the hull patterns beneath his hand began to pulse with a soft blue light, spreading outward like ripples in a pond. Deep within the ship, something awakened. But they weren't the only ones making discoveries. At the edge of known space, automated sensors began detecting unusual energy signatures, similar to those that had led them to the derelict fleet, but stronger. Moving. Purposeful. Sarah was reviewing the latest data when Marcus burst into her office, his face pale. "Dr. Chen, you need to see this. The quantum fluctuations we detected, they're not random. They're signals. And they're being answered." Answered? By what? By something out there in intergalactic space. Something big. And it's coming this way. Sarah looked at the sensor data, her blood running cold as she realized what they were seeing. The derelict fleet hadn't been abandoned. It had been waiting. Waiting for a warning that was now being answered, 50,000 years late. As she prepared another emergency transmission to Earth Command, Sarah couldn't help but wonder if the Galactic Assembly's dismissal of humanity's capabilities might have just cost them precious preparation time. Because whatever was coming, she had a feeling they were going to need every second they could get. The ancient ships loomed silently in the void, their hull patterns pulsing ever so slightly faster, like the quickening heartbeat of a giant awakening from a long slumber. Humanity had found them just in time. Or perhaps they had found humanity just in time. Either way, Sarah knew one thing for certain. The galaxy was about to change forever, and humanity, despite what the Assembly thought, would be at the center of it all. The emergency session of the Galactic Assembly descended into chaos as Dr. Chen's hologram displayed the latest sensor data. Massive objects were accelerating through intergalactic space, their energy signatures matching patterns found in the ancient fleet's databanks. "The data is conclusive." Sarah projected her voice over the commotion. "We're looking at an invasion force larger than anything in recorded history. At their current velocity, they'll reach the galaxy's edge in less than 6 months." High Commissioner Zach Stoll's crystalline form flickered with agitation. "Preposterous. Our long-range sensors show no such threat. This is another human attempt to justify their interference with technology beyond their understanding." But Ambassador Lyra stood again, her luminescent eyes scanning the data streams. "These readings, they bypass our standard detection methods. How did you discover them?" James Harper stepped forward, his hand steady as he manipulated the holographic display. The ancient ship's sensor logs contained filtering algorithms we'd never seen before. When we applied them to our deep space scans, he gestured at the ominous readings. In the 3 months since discovering the fleet, humanity had made remarkable progress. Teams of engineers and scientists worked around the clock, decoding the ship's systems. Each breakthrough revealed more questions, but also more urgency. The ships weren't abandoned, Sarah continued. They were left as a warning system, a first line of defense. Their builders knew something was coming, something they couldn't defeat even with their advanced technology. The assembly chambers erupted again, but this time with nervous energy. Even the most skeptical members couldn't entirely dismiss the implications. Back at the fleet site, now designated Sanctuary Point by Earth Command, the work continued with renewed intensity. Dr. Elena Santos, the project's lead physicist, had made a critical discovery about the ship's power systems. The quantum-locked materials, she explained to Sarah during a late-night briefing. They're not just for structural integrity. They're part of a massive energy collection system. These ships don't just use power. They harvest it from the fabric of space-time itself. But progress wasn't fast enough. The first outer colony world, a small mining outpost in the Carina Arm, went dark without warning. When assembly investigators arrived, they found only debris where a planet should have been. Sarah received the news with grim determination. "Show me the destruction pattern analysis," she demanded, studying the debris field calculations. "It matches the ancient ship's warning records exactly." More colonies fell. The Assembly's mighty defense fleet, dispatched to investigate, encountered something that defied conventional physics. The few ships that returned carried crews babbling about shadows that ate light, about weapons that didn't so much destroy as erase. High Commissioner Zach Stoll finally called for an emergency meeting with Earth's delegation. His crystalline form had lost its usual luster, dulled by fear. "How close are you to activating the ancient fleet?" he asked without preamble. Sarah exchanged glances with James before responding. "We've made breakthroughs with the interface systems, but power activation is proving challenging. The quantum matrices. Time, Dr. Chen. Give me time. 3 months, maybe 4, to activate the first ship. But there's something else." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "The ships, they're responding to human neural patterns in unexpected ways. We think they're not just accepting our commands. They're learning from us." In the depths of one of the ancient vessels, Alina's team had made another discovery. The shifting patterns that covered the ship's hulls weren't just an interface. They were a language that, impossibly, seemed to be evolving to match human thought patterns. "It's like they're waking up," James observed, watching as new patterns formed under his touch, not just activating, but actually becoming aware. The next few weeks brought more losses. The Assembly's finest warships, armed with their most devastating weapons, proved useless against the invaders. Entire systems began evacuating, flooding toward the galaxy's core. Sarah stood in the observation deck of the Hawking, now permanently stationed at Sanctuary Point, watching teams of engineers swarm over the ancient vessels. They had managed to power up several smaller systems, each success bringing them closer to understanding the ship's full potential. "Dr. Chen," called Marcus from his station. "We're picking up a new signal from the invaders. It's a message." The translation took hours, even with the Assembly's best linguistic eyes. When it finally came through, Sarah felt her blood run cold. "All will be aid. All will be forgotten. The harvest begins anew." But as terror spread through the Assembly worlds, humanity worked with increasing determination. They had found these ships for a reason, Sarah believed. The patterns that danced across the ancient hulls seemed to pulse in agreement, growing stronger with each passing day. In her quarters that night, Sarah reviewed the latest activation simulations. The invaders were coming, yes, but humanity wasn't going to face them unprepared. The ancient fleet had chosen to reveal itself to humans for a reason, and she intended to prove that choice hadn't been in vain. As if in response to her thoughts, the ship's patterns swirled in new configurations, casting soft blue light across her console. They were running out of time, but with every passing hour, the connection between humanity and these mysterious vessels grew stronger. The question wasn't whether they could activate the fleet anymore. The question was, what would happen when they did? Beyond the galaxy's edge, the invading force continued its implacable advance, unaware that their ancient enemies had found new allies who excelled at doing the impossible. The first ancient ship awakened on a Tuesday. James Harper stood in the neural interface chamber, surrounded by swirling patterns of light that had become increasingly responsive to human presence. Dr. Elena Santos monitored quantum fluctuations from a nearby console, while Sarah Chen observed from the command center. Neural sync at 85%. Elena reported, her voice tight with concentration. "Quantum matrix stabilizing." "James, how do you feel?" James closed his eyes, feeling the ship's consciousness brush against his mind. "It's incredible. The ship isn't just responding. It's communicating. Not in words, but in concepts, images." The massive vessel shuddered, its hull patterns blazing with brilliant blue-white light. Throughout its length, systems dormant for 50 millennia hummed to life. In the assembly's monitoring stations, alarms blared as energy readings went off the scale. By the first light, High Commissioner Zaxtal whispered, watching the feeds from his emergency bunker. The human experiment wasn't just working. It was succeeding beyond anyone's wildest expectations. The ship, which James had named Dawnbreaker, rose from its resting place with impossible grace. Its quantum-locked hull shifted and flowed like liquid metal, adapting to the new patterns of thought flowing through its systems. "The neural interface isn't just a control system," James reported, his voice filled with wonder. "It's a partnership. The ship, it remembers. It remembers everything." Through the link, James saw flashes of ancient battles, of civilizations rising and falling, of a terrible enemy that consumed light and life itself. But more than that, he felt the ship's approval, its satisfaction at finding new allies who could comprehend its purpose. The breakthrough couldn't have come at a better time. The invading force had already consumed 3 major assembly systems, their incomprehensible weapons erasing matter itself from existence. Conventional defenses proved worse than useless. Energy weapons simply disappeared into the void-like ships without effect. Sarah coordinated with Earth Command and the remaining assembly fleet. "Dawnbreaker has shown us how to activate the others," she explained to the Emergency Council. "We need pilots, humans with specific neural patterns who can sync with the ships." "How many?" Ambassador Lyra asked, her luminescent eyes intense. "As many as we can find. The ships, they're choosing their pilots. Not everyone is compatible." A massive recruitment effort began. Millions of humans volunteered to be tested for neural compatibility. Those who matched were rushed to Sanctuary Point for accelerated training. The ancient fleet stirred to life ship by ship, each vessel's awakening marked by displays of power that defied known physics. Elena's team made another crucial discovery during this period. The quantum-locked hull material, she explained during a briefing. It doesn't just protect the ships. It can generate fields that neutralize the invaders' matter-erasing weapons. That's why these ships were built. They're the only things that can actually fight back. The Assembly's surviving warships regrouped at Sanctuary Point, their crews watching in awe as humans merged with technology far beyond current galactic understanding. The ancient vessels no longer looked entirely like ships. They had become something new, transformed by their symbiosis with human consciousness. James led the first combat trial, taking Dawnbreaker to a system already lost to the invaders. The ship moved with impossible speed, its quantum fields disrupting the void-like enemy vessels. For the first time, the invaders could be heard. "The ships remember how to fight them," James reported back. But they needed new perspectives, new strategies. They needed human creativity and adaptability. Sarah watched the sensor feeds with fierce pride as more ancient vessels awakened. Each ship adapted differently to its human pilot, developing unique capabilities while maintaining their core purpose. The fleet was becoming something unprecedented, a perfect fusion of human ingenuity and ancient power. But the enemy had noticed. The invading force changed course, abandoning its systematic consumption of outer systems to surge toward Sanctuary Point. They recognized the ancient fleet, and they feared it. "They're coming for us," Sarah announced to the assembled pilots. "All of us. Everything we've learned, everything we've awakened. It's about to be tested." The neural interface chamber hummed with energy as James prepared Dawnbreaker for the coming battle. Through his connection to the ship, he felt its eagerness, its determination. The patterns on its hull shifted faster now, forming complex designs that reflected both its ancient purpose and its new partnership with humanity. Dr. Chen, Elena called from her station. The quantum readings. All the ships are synchronizing. They're forming some kind of network. Sarah watched as the ancient fleet moved into formation, their transformed hulls gleaming with internal light. The assembly's remaining ships took position alongside them. Traditional technology joining forces with the incomprehensible. Beyond the galaxy's edge, the invading force accelerated. They had come to harvest, to unmake, to force entropy upon a living galaxy. Instead, they found their ancient enemies were born through partnership with a species too young to know its own potential. As the fleet prepared for battle, Sarah reflected on how far they'd come. The assembly had dismissed humanity as primitive, unworthy of the ancient ships. Now, those same ships pulsed with power, transformed by human consciousness into something even their original builders might not recognize. The final confrontation was approaching. Humanity had awakened the fleet, but what they'd really awakened was something far more powerful, hope for an entire galaxy. The void between stars erupted with impossible energies as humanity launched its counter-offensive. Dawnbreaker led the charge. James Harper's consciousness merged completely with the ancient vessel's systems. Behind him, 50 more awakened ships followed, each one piloted by a human whose neural patterns had been deemed compatible with the ancient technology. Contact in 30 seconds. Sarah Chen's voice echoed through the quantum-encrypted command channel. From her position on the Modify Assembly flagship, she coordinated the combined fleet's movements. Remember your training. These ships know how to fight the enemy. Trust their instincts, but don't be afraid to improvise. The invaders appeared like tears in reality, their void ships seeming to consume the very starlight around them. But this time, they faced an enemy prepared for their impossible weapons. Now, James commanded, and Dawnbreaker's quantum fields flared to life. The ship's hull rippled like liquid metal, patterns flowing and shifting as it implemented battle strategies refined over 50,000 years of evolution. The first clash was spectacular. The invaders' matter-erasing beams splashed harmlessly against the ancient ship's quantum fields. In return, the human-piloted vessels unleashed weapons that bent space itself, tearing the void ships apart with surgical precision. They didn't expect us to be able to hurt them, Elena Santos observed from her research station, monitoring the quantum fluctuations of the battle. Look at their formation. They're actually retreating. But the enemy's surprise didn't last long. The void ships regrouped, adopting new tactics. They had encountered these ancient vessels before, had eventually overwhelmed them through sheer numbers. They expected this confrontation to end the same way. They were wrong. Pattern Alpha 7. James called out, and the human-piloted fleet moved in perfect synchronization. The ancient ships had always fought as individuals, but humanity brought something new to the equation: coordination, teamwork, and innovative thinking. Dawnbreaker led 2 other ships in a complex maneuver that trapped a cluster of void ships in a quantum crossfire. The enemy vessels, caught between overlapping fields of twisted spacetime, imploded spectacularly. The neural network is holding, Elena reported excitedly. The ships are learning from each other, adapting their strategies in real time. The assembly's conventional warships provided support, their traditional weapons modified based on data from the ancient vessels. While not as effective as the quantum weapons, they could still distract and harass the enemy, creating openings for the transformed fleet to exploit. High Commissioner Zach Stahl watched the battle unfold with a mixture of awe and humility. "We were wrong about them," he admitted to Ambassador Lyra. "These humans, they've done more than just activate the ancient fleet. They've improved it." The battle raged across an entire sector of space. The void ships fought with increasing desperation as their numbers dwindled. They had never encountered resistance like this, not just the ancient technology they feared, but wielded in ways they couldn't predict. "They're trying to break through to Sanctuary Point," Sarah observed, studying the tactical displays. "They want to destroy the remaining dormant ships before we can awaken them." James felt Dawnbreaker's agreement through their neural link. The ship shared memories of a similar strategy used eons ago, the enemy's last resort when faced with likely defeat. Not this time, James thought, and the ship's patterns pulsed in harmony with his determination. Through the neural network, he shared the tactical insight with the other pilots. The human-piloted fleet moved as one, cutting off the enemy's advance with a wall of quantum fire. The void ships, their primary strategy thwarted, attempted to scatter. Some tried to flee back toward intergalactic space, while others launched suicide attacks against the assembly worlds. But the transformed fleet was ready for both tactics. "Look at the quantum readings," Elena exclaimed. "The ships aren't just fighting together, they're resonating. The neural network is amplifying their power exponentially." The ancient vessels, guided by human creativity and determination, performed maneuvers their original builders had never conceived. They twisted space in impossible ways, trapped enemy ships in temporal loops, and systematically dismantled the invasion force that had terrified the galaxy. Sarah watched with fierce pride as humanity proved itself on the galactic stage. The assembly members who had dismissed them as primitive now watched in stunned silence as human pilots demonstrated mastery over technology that had baffled their finest scientists. Multiple enemy signatures breaking off, Marcus reported from his sensor station. "They're retreating across all vectors. The remaining void ships are going into full withdrawal." The cheers that erupted across the command channel were decidedly human, but the pulsing patterns of light that danced across the ancient ships seemed to share in the celebration. Through the neural link, James felt Dawnbreaker's satisfaction, not just at the victory, but at the vindication of its choice to wait for humanity. As the battle wound down, Sarah began receiving messages from assembly worlds. Systems that had been preparing for evacuation now celebrated humanity's triumph. The species they had underestimated had become their salvation. But James, still connected to Dawnbreaker's vast memory, knew this was just the beginning. The ship showed him glimpses of other threats lurking in the dark between galaxies, other challenges that would require the unique partnership between human consciousness and ancient technology. The transformed fleet regrouped at Sanctuary Point, their quantum-locked hulls still humming with power. They had won this battle, but the war for the galaxy's future was just beginning. And humanity, once dismissed as too young and primitive to matter, would be leading the charge. 3 months after the Great Battle, the Galactic Assembly convened its first full session since the invasion. The Grand Chambers, once a symbol of established power, now hummed with new energy as representatives from every surviving species gathered to witness an unprecedented ceremony. Sarah Chen stood before the assembly, her formal uniform now bearing the insignia of the Joint Fleet Command, a merged symbol of human and ancient design. Behind her, through the chamber's vast windows, the transformed fleet hung in high orbit, their quantum-locked hulls shimmering with patterns that could now be seen as a new form of life. "The threat has been neutralized," she reported, her voice carrying across the hushed chamber. The last void ship signatures vanished beyond the galaxy's edge 2 weeks ago. Long-range scans using the ancient sensors show no signs of their return. High Commissioner Zach Stoll's crystalline form pulsed with respectful colors as he rose to speak. "Dr. Chen, the Assembly has convened today not just to hear your report, but to acknowledge a profound change in the galactic order. We were wrong about humanity. Catastrophically wrong." The admission sent ripples through the gathered representatives. Many of them had once sneered at human primitives, attempting to understand technology beyond their comprehension. Now those same humans had saved their civilizations. James Harper, attending via hologram from Dawnbreaker's neural interface chamber, shared a knowing look with Sarah. Through his connection to the ship, he could sense the satisfaction emanating from the entire awakened fleet. "The ancient vessels didn't just choose us randomly," he explained to the assembly. "They were waiting for a species that could help them evolve beyond their original purpose. The builders designed them to defend, but humanity showed them how to adapt, to grow, to become something new." Elena Santos stepped forward, her research team's findings displayed in holographic detail above the chamber. The quantum resonance between human neural patterns and the ship's consciousness has created something unprecedented. They're not just weapons anymore. They're becoming a bridge between organic and artificial life. The transformed fleet provided dramatic evidence of this evolution. Each ship had developed unique characteristics based on its pilot's personality, while maintaining the core abilities that made them effective against cosmic threats. Their hull patterns had evolved into a complex language that other species were only beginning to decipher. Ambassador Lyra, who had first supported humanity's efforts to study the fleet, addressed the chamber. "We face a choice now. The old order of the assembly was based on age and established power. But age did not save us. Established power did not protect us. It was innovation, adaptation, and courage that preserved our civilizations." The assembly's vote was unanimous. Humanity would take a leading role in galactic affairs, specifically in matters of defense and technological development. The transformed fleet would become the core of a new defensive force, with human pilots training others who showed compatibility with the ancient technology. But perhaps the most profound change came from the ships themselves. Through the neural network, they shared glimpses of other challenges waiting in the darkness between galaxies. The void ships had not been the only threat the original builders had faced, merely the first to return. "We've got a lot of work ahead of us," Sarah told the assembled representatives. The ancient fleet wasn't just a weapon cache. It was a warning system and a preparation for things to come. Humanity is ready to lead this effort, but we'll need all of your civilization's knowledge and resources. As if in response to her words, the transformed fleet above began a synchronized pattern dance, their quantum fields interweaving in displays of power that were also hauntingly beautiful. The ships were celebrating in their own way, acknowledging the birth of a new era. James, through his link with Dawnbreaker, felt the ship's deep contentment. "They're not just satisfied with victory," he shared with Sarah later. "They're excited about the future, about what we'll become together." In the weeks that followed, more humans were found to be compatible with the remaining dormant ships. Each awakening brought new discoveries, new adaptations, new possibilities. The fleet that had been built as a last line of defense was becoming something its creators could never have imagined, a synthesis of ancient wisdom and human innovation. Sarah stood at the observation deck of the newly established Fleet Academy, watching young pilots from various species beginning their training. The transformed ships hung in orbit above, their patterns shifting in endless variations. They were no longer just humanity's secret weapon or the assembly's salvation. They had become a symbol of what was possible when age-old power met fresh perspective. "Ready for the next challenge?" James asked through the quantum comm, Dawnbreaker's patterns reflecting his anticipation. Sarah smiled, knowing that whatever threats lurked in the darkness between stars, they would face them together. Humans, ancient ships, and the unified species of the galaxy. "Always ready," she replied. "Let's show the universe what we can do." Above, the transformed fleet pulsed with light, their quantum-locked hulls singing with the power of a civilization reborn through the most unexpected of partnerships. The silent fleet had found its voice at last, and the galaxy would never be the same.